Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm here today to do the 5th day of the Something New meditation. And I have to tell you, I had a dream last night that I actually remembered, so I won't be doing the dream journal. I will be instead doing this new dream. So this was kind of exciting and it's kind of cool because I woke up this morning thinking about it and going, well, gee, what's going to happen here with this? How is this going to work? How is this going to impact the flow of things? And I think that it's okay that things happen the way they're supposed to. So I'm going to start by pulling the card. I'm using the Oracle of Mystical Moments by Catrin Welz-Stein. And here's the box, so you can see the image. Interestingly enough, the cover picture of the woman with the braided hair was similar to the card that I pulled yesterday. But we'll see what happens here. And the cards are flipping out everywhere. Okay. So let's see what card I get today. Today I got Moon Dance, which is, I think, a beautiful card. I love how she's like on the tightrope and she's, walking and the balloon is above her and it looks like the moon, but it looks like also like a balloon. It seems as though she's attached to it and she's dancing along like a ballerina along this thing. And then there's 3 birds that are sitting on the wire and they're just kind of just sitting there still and chilling and doing their thing. So very interesting card. I like the way the stars are situated in the picture and how it's, even though it's nighttime, it's just, you can still feel a lightness in it. Also love her dress. I'm a big fan of green, and so the dress is green, and I just think it's pretty, and I like it, and yeah. Something I could maybe one day sew. But anyway, so that's the card for today, and I'm going to go ahead and put that aside, and then I'm going to just get started on the meditation. And I start today's day 5. It's May 7th, 2025, and it's called Switching Pictures. I said, the dream I have for you today does not involve bicycles, but it does have several players in it. Nigel says, sounds interesting. So what is it about? I said, well, this is what I dreamt last night. So the dream is not from my journal, but instead a brand new idea. I was in a large room and was participating in a game. Around me, there were about a dozen or so people. Several framed pictures were on the table. I would say 2 or 3 at the most. The game was for the player to go and retrieve a picture from the table and switch it out with one of the pictures that were on the wall. The wall was about the size of a large room, not necessarily a ballroom, but a room that had all the comforts of home, a sofa, tables, and what have you. The idea was to take one picture from the table and switch one of the pictures on the wall out and return that picture to the table. And so I went to the wall and hung the picture and took down the one already hanging there. The next person stepped up, did the same. Since the pictures were all of various sizes, when my turn came again, there were only very large pictures on the table and smaller prints were all on the walls. Whatever picture I could have taken from the wall would overlap another picture that was already on the wall. And this would happen unintentionally. I was not certain if this was the rule of the game, but I tried to hang the picture creatively so that it was not directly touching the wall. It would not be directly against the wall. As I backed away after hanging it, I could see that I was able, based on where I stood and my perception, I could see the picture that was underneath or covered by the larger picture. And soon after that, I woke up. Metatron says, interesting. What were the pictures of? I said landscapes mostly. I didn't see images of people at all. And Metatron says, you said that this was a game of pictures being switched out. What was your perception of the game? Was it serious or fun? I said, I don't think it was serious, but the overall concept of it was simply pass the time. I had the impression that we were all there to wait for something, but the idea came as a way to simply pass the time. I didn't feel a sense of urgency in the group. And Metatron says, okay, so you were not in a place of business, it was more like a home. I said, yes, we were in a home, but it felt like we were waiting to leave that home. There was a sense of calm in the place, but none of us really thought much about when we would be leaving. Then we started this game, and suddenly our focus changed. We were no longer feeling a sense of urgency. It just became fun. Ramon says, did you recognize where you were? Did the place seem familiar? I said, it felt a lot like the library. The walls looked old-fashioned with like a wooden border to them. So like every so often you'd have like a wooden border that would like frame that part of the wall. Ramon says, could the people be the same group as in the dream from a few days ago? You had a dream 2 nights ago about the library with a group of people who you mingled with, but then separated yourself from. The dream from 2023 were connected to your relationship to the bicycle, but perhaps these more recent dreams may be a connection to the people who were actually present. And I said, I didn't think about that. It was really a strange instance. What could it mean? Metatron says it means that the dream with the pictures could have the same players as the dream in the library. Was the person who was seated with you in the library present? And I said, not that I recall, but then again, I really did not know the other people who were placing pictures. I just remember that the pictures were being switched out and we were going along with the game. I didn't really feel any sort of connection to them at all. Metatron says, okay, so the pictures were of landscapes. Did any one picture stand out to you? I said the only one that did was one with a circle of trees in a meadow. I remember hanging it on the wall and having to cover up another picture. And Metatron says, do you remember what was on that picture? I said, no, I just remember being able to see it from the side, depending solely on where I was standing in the room. Wait a minute. I do remember there was a lot of reds in the picture, rock formations. The colors could have been autumn colors, but it wasn't trees or leaves. It was more like rock or desert style look to it. Metatron says, these were being covered by the greenness of the meadow on the tree or the trees. I said, yes, it was strange because depending on where I stood would determine if I had actually seen the picture beneath it. Metatron said, did the people react to the placement in that picture? I said, no, they merely milled off, sort of just casually walking away. They no longer seemed interested in the game, not even remotely. Before waking up, I asked myself if this was important. No one else seemed to be of the mindset that it was significant. Why did it seem important to you? I said, I don't know. Maybe it is my old OCD talking. I remember whenever I would decorate the Christmas tree that I would try to keep one ornament from touching the other ornaments. The pictures were the same. When I would look at a picture on the wall, I would always see each individual picture as significant in its own right. So when I placed the picture on that wall and it covered another picture, that always felt weird to me. And Metatron says, did you see the pictures in a similar manner as you see the ornaments? I said, yes, and near the end of the dream, people had started to move the decor around. It suddenly felt as though this was more than a game. When I said earlier that people were no longer interested, that was not accurate because they were now moving planters, urns, and other things around. Metatron says, so some of them were moving things around. Were you as well? I said, I don't recall. I just remember seeing all of the others start to move objects around. I think I took it as an okay to start as well. Metatron says, that seems to signify how you move through life. You wait for others to basically indicate that taking the initiative is okay, and then you respond accordingly. I said, is that wrong? And Metatron says, no, it's not wrong, but it is an indicator that you are not someone who initiates an activity. Perhaps that goes back to the fears you have of being judged. You wait, and then when you see someone doing something, that is your sign that you can also begin. I said, well, there is nothing worse than being alone in the actions one takes. It's rather like dancing in the middle of a room where nobody else is dancing and they're all just looking at you and staring at you like you are an idiot. Metatron says that makes people stand out. What you are doing here is taking the step. Instead of waiting for another person to do something of this kind, you are taking the incentive. The dream about the pictures and the one in the library parallel in that sense, as Ramon described. You see a group of people. Each individual is on his or her own path. The decisions we made in the sense that you either break away and go off to do the library, or you stay in a group setting and spend time playing a game with no real objective except to weigh out each person's level of being obsessive compulsive. As you move pictures from the table to the wall and possibly cover up other pictures, you are seeing the perspective change. The perspective of the wall, how it appears. Does it make the room seem bigger or smaller? Is there a sense of calm or placement of the pictures? The question becomes not so much in the sense of interior design or approving of the way you and your compatriots decorated the walls, but instead, if you could see the piece in a picture of a meadow or by looking at a desert landscape. Each picture depicted a landscape, not a person, so it could be that each person has the notion of what peace might represent to them. How does the room encapsulate the idea of finding peace, of being in a moment where calm and peace can fill one's person? The placement of your last picture was a sense of perspective, how each person can find calm in places or things. Yesterday, we spoke about the Akashic Records, and you said that the Akashic Records were your meadow. But it was also revealed to you that your Akashic Records are not limited to one place, that you could find them in a library or a meadow. When you covered the wall with an image that you remembered to be a meadow, you strive to bring both of those places together. The other people were striving to do exactly the same. All of this embodied in their own perspectives of their own idea of what their Akashic records appear to be. You see, each person has a perspective or a way of viewing the world. By placing pictures on a wall, this is your way of showing how you perceive the world. But those other people also have a perception on how they view the world. I said, so it's all a metaphor. The pictures are not really pictures, but rather ideas or values. And Metatron says, exactly. What you are seeing here is a visual way that people perceive the world and how the world is shaped through the ideas of others. All of this is a parallel of what it means to see others and their ways of looking at the world. The pictures are a physical image of what views you have in an ever-changing world. As you go through life, you will find people who might choose the images to portray in a similar way that you do, or you see things in a completely different way. It is akin to you and your friend playing a game and discovering that you each decorated a room in a similar style with some of the same items used, but also that you both use different ones as well. The friend of yours is compatible to you in certain ways, but incompatible in others. That is what you gain by looking at the rooms. No two people will ever have the same ideas when it comes to things. That is where listening and learning come into being. It becomes a more significant idea to understand that no two people will ever see things in exactly the same way, but the roads we choose will align them in a way that are profound and significant. That is the lesson to be had by the switching pictures. I said, it's much deeper than I thought. Is there any significance to my brief dream or waking up thinking that I had radio contact with Oprah Winfrey? Metatron says, no, that's just a casual idea. I said, no significance at all. I always saw her as a spiritual person. And Sunshine breaks in and says, oh, sure. And she is the same person who bought into some massive untruths. Many times people start out with these spiritual intentions, but somehow get corrupted by money. I said, so this was, as Metatron said, basically meaningless. And Metatron says, not necessarily. How did she transmit? I said, she gave only her name. And Metatron says, yeah, yes. And how should someone transmit? I said, with a call sign. Oh, wait, now I get it. They're able to drift by rules and avoid regulations because they are wealthy. And Metatron says, yes. This bit of insight about her being a wealthy person and getting away with more because of her status is shown here. How does it make you feel to see things like this happen? I said, it makes me really angry because I worked really hard to get my call sign. I studied for nearly half a year to get the advanced license. It is infuriating how rich people are able to do whatever they want, buy citizenships, buy licenses, and buy their way out of prison because they are wealthy. And Metatron says that will soon come to an end. People will learn very quickly that this sort of thing is not acceptable by any society. So in the future, the people who think or believe that they can buy anything will discover that they cannot. That snippet of a dream is going to tell you that this is perhaps the way of the world today, but soon it will not be the case any longer. I said, I will welcome that day. Metatron said, as will the universe, until tomorrow. And that's where we ended. So yeah, that was very strange. Okay, first I woke up with that weird sense that I had that radio contact with Oprah Winfrey, and I thought, I used to admire her a lot. And when I found out that she was kind of building up the reputations of some pretty devious characters, I kind of turned away from her and from her whole shtick. So, but that was just me. But the idea and this notion that the wealthy people get away with everything, I was happy to hear that Metatron confirmed that won't be happening for much longer. So that's a good thing. So back to the card, moon dance. So it's interesting that I mentioned dancing in the meditation about being the only person in the room, starting to dance and feeling like everybody's looking at you. Well, this woman is a single woman who is dancing, and do I think that she really gives a care about how people perceive her or what they think of her? Probably not. Maybe there's something to be said about being an individual and saying, okay, I'm going to do this, and whatever people think, well, they're going to think it anyway. So that's what I got from it. So at any rate, so it's a little bit everywhere and nowhere at the same time, but that's the way it is sometimes. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing and liking the videos. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And I think that in the coming days, things are going to get very, very interesting. These dreams are somehow connected to each other, but yet they're also separate dreams and separate ideas and values and ideas and stuff like that. So I'm very, very happy that that this idea is actually not a bad idea and that it's actually working. So I just have to trust my guides that it is going to work out for the best. So I thank you for being here, and take care. And as always, namaste.